You touched on architects a little bit, and we're going to move on. Actually, that's a perfect segue into Pete Schwartz from Vessel, and talk about some actually practical applications of some of the AI that you're using with your clients and client integration.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me this morning. It's really neat to talk about this in a room full of people. Most of what I have to share with you is about this tool being used for visual things, but one of the first ways our team started using it was verbal. And Allison, you talked about ChatGPT. And actually, I should take a half step back. Philosophically, the first way we engage with AI was decided we're not going to be afraid of it. That, yeah, sure, we've all seen Terminator, and that's where the imagination goes, but that's human fear. And what we have in front of us is this amazing tool that's going to revolutionize so many things about the way we work and the way we live. And human beings are amazing, and we're going to find ways to safeguard that. Now, is it going to be perfect? Of course not. But we made that decision. Let's like Luke Skywalker turning on the lightsaber for the first time, right? You realize there's a lot to be responsible for here, but what an amazing tool. So once we decided that, we started using just the language models in ChatGPT. And so it helps our emails. We're using it, just even the way it's advanced to check tone in writing. And before you make an ask, make a compliment. And so we're revising the content of our emails and our writings that way. It's been very helpful. And one of the ways it really automated some work for us, as architects, we like to draw things and create things and imagine things, but we also like to talk about what we're learning. And so we began using it to generate thought leadership pieces that had been sitting on our to-do lists and half drafted in our saved documents for a long, long time. And what we found is if we could put a team of people together in our office that could just talk through what we're learning about a system or a technology or a building material or a design principle, then we could bring the right people to bear on that process and leverage the GPT model to create that document for us. So we brought our marketing coordinator in and 2 or 3 architects, and then a person on our staff that we would interview over a certain topic. And it might be something like, how do you help a general contractor when the project is in construction? How do you solve a really tricky problem when it comes to floor efficiency or building maintenance or something like that? And we would just have a conversation and we would record it. And then Sydney would take all of that recording and put it into ChatGPT and prompt it, and out would come a thought leadership piece. But of course, the humans have to look at it and have to make sense of it. So there'd be some things we would edit. Of course, there'd be some things we would pull out. But the really fascinating thing we found early on is that the quotes that came out of the article were, in some ways, sometimes they were the direct recording of the person being interviewed. And then in other times, it was just simply writing as you would write a piece. And we would read it and say, you know what? That's exactly the way Rebecca would say it. That sounds like her. And those quotes, those are her. And that really confirmed for us this is a powerful tool. So verbally, it's helping architects even. But the really exciting things, of course, that I get to talk about are the visual ones and how we're creating imagery for clients and how we can help them really get some value early in their projects. And one that comes to mind is a couple of anecdotes I can tell you about some not-for-profit clients we've been working with. One of them approached us last summer, and it was an animal shelter, a fun group of people, small organization, looking for the first time to build their own headquarters, purchase their own property. And so rather than take them through an exhaustive process of programming and interviews, we spent 15 or 20 minutes just getting a download from their key leaders about what they thought this thing might be like and where it might go. And then we could use that to create a prompt in Midjourney, and prompt after prompt, iteration after iteration. I went through maybe 5 or 6 iterations of image generation until we finally hit on just exactly the right farmhouse with exactly the right pond and exactly the right dogs waving their tail exactly the right way. And we hadn't really even planned this building out. It didn't, and this was the fascinating thing. This early in the process, it didn't matter if that building was the right square footage. It didn't matter if the CEO's office was exactly right or if the veterinary side of it was right. That image captured the spirit of the project so powerfully that the entire group was able to rally around it before we even spent time getting technical on it. Now, the way we brought our technical expertise as architects was to tell them, whatever this might do to capture your heart, here's the reality of the budget. And that's where the human experience, the architect's abilities and history, and quite frankly, ability to make a boring spreadsheet of square footages in dollars is really important. So when we put those things together, we get a really great result for our clients. We save them time, save them money. We help them rally around that picture that's worth 1,000 words or more. And hopefully for a not-for-profit worth 1,000 donations, you've got to project a vision if you're seeking to bring people together. Am I up? Is my time up?
That was ChatGPT, that wasn't me.
Okay, all right.
My colleagues.
And then I'll share one. I've got a couple other anecdotes. I'll share one that also is another not-for-profit that is really an interesting story because of how fast the AI technology is developing. So another group came to us last summer. It's a not-for-profit youth soccer club, select soccer club here in St. Louis, wanting to establish its very first headquarters. And we took them through a programming experience where we actually identified functions and square footages and acreage and how many soccer fields and do we want to have a weight room and all those sorts of things that go into that. And in one of my first meetings with them, I also showed them some imagery that I had just generated through Midjourney, just using a verbal prompt. And it was fantastic imagery, but not really like what their building would ultimately be like. So then we opened a software called SketchUp, which is a 3D modeling software. It's relatively accessible, and we like to use that, and made some block diagrams, and then used that in Midjourney to begin our prompt to create an image. And then it created some images that looked a little bit more like what the club imagined their facility to be. But interestingly, and this was last summer, for all of its amazing ability to generate these photorealistic images of like space-age soccer facilities, it could not draw a soccer field with any accuracy to save its life. And so you'd see like a big green area because we prompted we need 4 fields side by side. And some of them would have goals, but they'd be turned on their side. They'd be off center. And then if you know anything about a soccer field, it's got some smaller boxes in it, but they were drawn like basketball lanes, with a half circle. And so that was a limitation for the client because they needed something more real. So in fact, the completely imagined imagery was more interesting to them than that sort of thing. But since then, the software called SketchUp has now integrated diffusion right in it. And so I opened up, just a week ago, the same view that I crafted last summer that ended up with those crazy sort of soccer club on acid sort of things. And I'm sorry? Hallucinations. Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's making up new games. I opened that up, and then using the diffusion application right inside SketchUp, we could craft an AI image that actually rendered the fields and the buildings. And it's even given you a measure of control in a couple of things. So you start with an image, and then you add your own prompt, and then you can decide how authentically do you want the AI software to work with those. So maybe you want to adhere very closely to the model geometry, but let it hallucinate with the prompt and see what happens. And so that's been 9 or 10 months that's happened so quickly.
It's pretty remarkable how quickly that is all happening and changing. And I know we have quite a few architects and firms that, folks in the audience that work with architecture firms, and I'm sure their minds are spinning right now thinking about the applications that they could also be using that for.